So we decided to do a project supporting the leadership development of 20s to 30s in churches that were in deprived areas.
We've seen progress in people growing in their leadership, growing in their faith.
It did bring its challenges with it, but I think we all, saw God move in massive ways.
In 2012, Coventry Diocese were awarded some funding from the Church Commissioners to run a leadership development scheme for young adults in churches in urban priority areas. So churches were identified as being in deprived areas and were asked if they'd got anybody in their 20s and 30s who were involved in some form of leadership, either employed or voluntary. People on the scheme run youth work, run kids work, are involved in leading worship, involved in all kinds of different church leadership. And the idea of the scheme was to bring together different people from different churches of a similar age doing similar things to develop their leadership skills, train them up in church leadership and to learn from each other as well.
I would say on average in the Diocese of Coventry our churches tend to be, not exclusively so, but tend to be 5 things. They're small, elderly, white, middle class and female. And one of the questions we have to ask is, did God intend the Church of England to be like that, or have we done something that's created an accessible environment for that particular client group and very few others? And I think it's more likely to be the latter than the former. Well, Coventry Diocese has a large number of people in the 20 to 30s age range. I think it's something like 350,000 people in that age range. And a great majority of those are living in the more deprived areas. And they also happen to be an age range that's missing out of our churches on the whole. So it seemed good to combine all of that together and to do a project that was reaching 20s to 30s in more deprived areas.
So the churches that were seen as urban priority area churches were contacted and asked if they did have people in their 20s and 30s who were doing some form of leadership at the church.
Yeah, the people that were recommended, they're very, very diverse. I'm thinking of some of them. Mel, when we first met Mel, she spent more time looking at the ground than looking at people.
I felt rather nervous. I wasn't really sure what it was. I wasn't really sure if being in leadership or being on a leadership course was the right thing for me. But actually that's changed and grown throughout being on the course and realising my leadership and where I stand.
We have got a couple called Matt and Emma who are part of a different style of church. So they're in a missional community church, which is quite small, and they do a lot of work with teenagers in their local area.
We've moved into this place where there was a lot of need, so it was good to be able to think about ways that we could engage with them and get some funding in order to kind of start something that would kind of help us to progress quicker than we otherwise might have.
I really liked the idea that the 20s to 30s was a group of like-minded people. I guess being around the same age usually helps with having the same ideas.
We've got a guy called Matt and Mark and his wife Claire, who are all at the same church. Mark and his wife run a group for children and their families, which meets each week, and they come in and they have food and they meet together. Mark's also the treasurer at the church and Matt is the church warden at the church. So they're using their kind of church leadership skills in different ways outside of just the projects.
Being trusted to take on some extra leadership responsibility and to be identified as someone who could do that and would have the support to do that in itself was encouragement to investigate the project and what it could offer.
We also have Erin, who was a church warden at her church, and she was involved in the leadership at the church there.
Definitely, I think the younger generation needs to be more involved in church, to have more input and more involvement in the church as we go along.
She met her now husband on the scheme, Simon.
We met on the first 20s to 30s away weekend, which was in Birmingham.
Currently we have at Urban Hope 2 people who are involved on the 20s to 30s work. There is Simon Ray and there is Bex Rothney. I am big fans of both of them. Simon's a very practical person. So Simon is somebody that is really good to have around.
It seemed interesting. I wanted to be involved. It was intriguing. I think is the best way of putting it.
We've known Bex for probably only about a year and a half. She came to us as the new youth worker at Bardsley House, our youth centre, but she's got so much involved in Bardsley and in Urban Hope that it feels like she's been around forever.
I thought it was really exciting. It was a chance for a generation that is sadly missing on the whole in the church, kind of get our voices heard and really start new and exciting initiatives. And also to share those across the diocese and what people were finding, to learn from each other.
So we also have Liz on the scheme. She's joined the scheme fairly recently. She's involved in leading worship at her church, and she organises the worship team and organises practices each week.
Topi is part of actually quite a small church, but they really wanted to get involved in their local community and serve the local community, and the local school had said great benefit to them would be the setting up of a food bank. So Topi, along with somebody else, helped to set the food bank up.
Because I work with Birmingham City Council, and based on the cuts that is happening to people about their benefits, the people struggling and the homeless as well, I was so eager to just find a way to help people.
So I was involved in the leadership project from the beginning. I then was asked last year if I would take on coordinating the project.
Kim was a youth worker who came onto the scheme, was going through quite a tough time, and at one point was really thinking of packing it all in, and seeing Kim develop from there into somebody who is now leading the entire 20s to 30s work right across the whole diocese. That has been fantastic to see that. The thinking behind the 20s to 30s scheme was trying to look at how do we develop healthy churches in a more deprived context, and there is a way in which we go about that in the Diocese of Coventry, which is affectionately known as the 8 EQs, the 8 essential qualities. So we wanted to see ways in which those qualities could be embedded into churches in deprived areas, but particularly with reference to a 20s to 30s generation. And the scheme really involved two major aspects. One was being part of a learning community where the participants could learn about leadership and leadership development, and then to put that into practice by doing a project in their church for which the scheme would give £2,000 to help them develop a missional community project in their local church.
For us as participants on the project, we had a number of weekends away where we did leadership training and development and some outdoor activities as well. We've had quite regular away days as well throughout the year. Again, just spending time reflecting on ourselves and what we've learnt and where we want to go and move forward.
It's been about that support, it's been about the friendships that have been made. Although we have had some teaching, we've had some leadership skills and things like that brought to us, it's been more about supporting each other and finding out different things about different areas of leadership.
There are people there that I can rant to. That helps. So when I'm getting frustrated, I can go and I can have a rant, and people are like, yeah, okay, I agree with you.
A lot of our experience has been similar, but they've also been quite different and diverse. It's been exciting to see the different things people have got involved with. So obviously, because of my role at Bardsley and the type of church, my emphasis has been on young people, but to see other people just wanting to get involved and bless other members of their congregation has been great. It's also been great because as part of the project we've got some funding for our Young Leaders scheme that we run at Bardsley House to take those young leaders away with the next cohort of young leaders, just to get them some time and space away from Coventry, and to just work on some of their leadership skills and widen their worldviews.
So Wales threw everything at us like it can. So we had windy horizontal rain. We nipped out to try and fly some kites at one point because it seemed to have stopped and got completely drenched. But on the whole, it was really exciting. So our last lot of young leaders had done a lot of organisation and planning for the next lot. So they put all the activities together, decided on a lot of sessions. So that was really exciting, and we had some really special times together as well, thinking about God and looking at the Bible.
Topi is part of a multicultural church which meets in a porta cabin, and the local school had said that they were desperately in need of a food bank. So Topi was one of the first people to set the project up for that food bank. She's had health issues recently. I'm glad to say that she's come through those, but as a result of that there are other people running the food bank at the moment. But it's good to see that the project is still there, and Topi herself is doing well.
There was a time I was on the phone and this elderly lady called me and said, oh, my benefit has been cut. They've not paid her rent for like 2 weeks. So she was really crying and at the stage of giving up, because she said, out of my 86 years of life, I've never gone through this. So she really, really inspired me, and I was thinking, if there is someone out there that can actually give her basic food just for her to eat something for that 2 weeks, she will be fine before she can start getting the benefit back. Because immediately they cut your benefit, you will be stranded for a particular period of time. In anything you want to do, you need the money for it to run perfectly. So it was a blessing missing Maurice, because it helped us with the funding.
Sharon was an enthusiastic early member of the scheme. Her vision was to get some instruments and some music teaching for some of the teenagers in the church, because the church had no live music. Sadly, Sharon's husband died, and she's also got now a full-time job which involves her working on Sundays, and it's been very difficult for her to follow that project up. But we followed it up on her behalf and bought a number of instruments on eBay, and instruments that the young people themselves wanted to play. And they've now got a band, been rehearsing with them for over a year and a half, and they now take part in a band-led service once a month in that church, or playing instruments in a way that they had not done a year and a half ago, and they're sounding really good.
I find it fun playing with other people with other instruments, so that instead of like practicing alone, I could practice with other people.
The atmosphere is also great, and you get the vibe of people, and it makes it a lot more enjoyable instead of playing by yourself.
Matt and Emma were a married couple when they started the scheme. They joined in on a church plant that went to, at the time, the most deprived area in Coventry, and were living in a missional community house with 2 ordained people, and they wanted to transform the garage into a youth space.
We meet with them weekly and we do food, but we also wanted to have a space that we chat life and God with them. So our first project was creating that space. We did it with the kids, so having 2 of us I think was good, because I'm the enthusiasm, but Matt's the
implementer.
DIYer, I was going to say.
And the other project we've done is we took some of our older kids to Romania to work with an organisation out there who work with the poor, and the poor in Romania is so far worse than the poor in England. And it was a really good experience for these kids who are from poor areas and backgrounds here to see what that really looked like. So they work with street kids who don't have homes. They saw the living conditions of families in the cities there in Romania, and as well as we worked with settled Romani gypsies who we help them to farm the land and do stuff like that. So it was a really dirty, hands-on kind of experience, as well as to hear the stuff that God was doing out there, which really boosted their faith.
It was really good to kind of run those projects alongside meeting up regularly with other members of the 20s-30s group to see how it would work, to make sure that we've actually thought through our ideas, thought about some of the issues that we might come up with that we might not have recognised at the time.
We've also had some people part of the scheme that haven't done a project as such, but actually they've taken on significant leadership responsibility in the life of their church as a result. So I've lost count now of the number of church wardens that we now have in the 20s-30s age range in churches. And to see overall the growth in confidence of the people that have been taking part in the scheme has been brilliant. It's been tough, to be honest. There's been lots of successes, there's also been lots of failures, but we would expect that. I think one of the surprising things even to myself who's worked with people in deprived areas, is the lack of confidence.
I think at the beginning of the course it was really quite challenging to recognise that I was a leader, or I am a leader, and watching others talk about where they are in leadership was quite challenging, because I didn't feel that I was in the same position. But actually, over the course, I have found my place in my leadership, and it's been challenging, but it's been really good.
Finding the time has been a challenge occasionally, particularly when I got married and had to split my time between 2 locations, but generally it's been very rewarding.
For me, the thing that pushed me the most was when we were going to Romania. We had a really, really hard journey to get there, and there were lots of things along the way, like getting passports and stuff like that kind of have some barriers too, but God was really good there. But when we were actually on the plane and getting in the cars, when we got there, we just had the worst time ever, and we were supposed to arrive about 1 in.the morning. We actually got to the camp about 5 in.the morning, and that was the most stretching experience I'd ever had. It was like horrific weather, we got stopped by the police, there were all sorts of things going on, but the experience that we had during the week of seeing the sorts of things that God was doing kind of totally just made that stuff a part of the story, which I think is important when you get tested in the fire and you get refined.
Our young people have quite chaotic lives, so we've had to accept some dropouts. However, those that have stayed and been able to complete the course, it's been really great just to see them grow, just to see them change in their own faith, them experience what it's like to be encouraged and empowered, and just to know that actually Jesus and the church has hit a point that's made it very relevant for them.
My project initially was to do a homework club for children, so getting them the help that they need, but also getting parents involved in that. The initial backing I had was help from a teacher who could help me with that side of it, but then he backed out. So it's just having the right kind of help, I think, is what my own challenges are.
Zach was an asylum seeker, and he was actually one of the first people to get a project up and running. He had a passion for gardening and vegetable growing, and created a whole garden area, and they started growing vegetables in there and then using those vegetables to teach people how to cook. So that project was going really well. Very sadly, Zach's asylum status was turned down, and so he's gone.
I think we've seen a lot of progress from the initial project. So when the leadership began, we've seen progress in people growing in their leadership, growing in their faith, just doing more in terms of church work and church leadership.
Big things I remember from that first weekend was that we all felt slightly like fish out of water, that we'd been identified as people who could take on leadership, but not many of us at that time had significant areas of leadership, and seeing the other people develop alongside me has been very rewarding.
It's definitely changed the way that I look at the church as a whole, the way that I see how the church runs, because I've never really thought about how others in different areas of leadership would feel and would be dealing with things, because I've been so focused on my own. But now actually from being on the course, I understand and I'm so more open to the way that a church works and the way that all the different areas are just working for the same goal.
The projects that they were allowed to set up and given some funding to get going have been enormously beneficial to us. So we've been able with Bex and Simon to give them the opportunity, I guess, to take some risks in a sort of safe environment, learn from that. And so I've watched them grow. Actually, Simon is a different person to he was 2 years ago.
It's been part of the overall turning from the muppet that I was into the person I am
The scheme has also helped me to get more involved with my own church. Like I say, I've now taken on the role of PCC member, deanery synod member, and now work with the creche as well and the children involved with that.
Some of the kids and even some of the mums of the kids would come to me to ask for things that I first naturally was like, no, I'm not the leader, you must go to my leader. So kind of taking on that mantle and taking on those responsibilities and feeling, I guess, the faith that the leaders start to have in you, and actually learning, I guess, to have faith in yourself as well.
I think if you think of a church that has the average membership of people in their 60s, in 10 years' time they'll be in their 70s. If we just keep doing what we've always done, we probably won't exist in 10 to 15 years, I would imagine. So we have to do something. This is an opportunity to take some risks, but we need to take some risks right now.
I would love to see the project continue for other people in a similar situation to I was. Even in the years since the project's been running, there are more people who have entered the 20s to 30s age range, and they need to be brought on into leadership positions as well.
In the future, I would love some of our young people that have gone through the Zion Young Leaders programme here really take on responsibilities at Bardsley and at Urban Hope, but I'd also really like to see them engage with the scheme itself when they're ready, so that they can really contribute to what church looks like and what learning communities look like for their generation from their experience.
I would recommend other couples take on the 20s-30s leadership course. I would say it's very good for a couple to do it, or a team or a pair of people, for the sake of encouraging each other and checking up on each other and bouncing ideas.
That is the idea of learning on the job, is making mistakes on the job, and actually, even if you fail, that's okay. Whatever else they learn, if people can learn that from what we've done in Coventry here, that's the bit that people need to take from here.
I think the challenges that the church has in the future is culture is changing so rapidly, and I think the challenges for the church is keeping up with that. It's keeping up with technology, keeping up with what interests people these days, and actually being able to move alongside people and to keep the younger generations coming in, finding things that interest them, but also keeping God relevant every day. Actually, the 20s to 30s, they know that what's going on, that they're in the right age bracket where they know what's happening in the culture from the younger side and the older side, and I think that the church needs to listen a little bit more. I think there's great potential, and I think that the project could help churches to embrace that change and not be afraid of it. Yeah, there's something really good and powerful in that.
So where we're up to at the moment is we have launched our Accelerate project, which the idea is to grow churches faster and to grow them younger. So we're using the 8 qualities of a healthy growing church across all churches, and we're also having an emphasis on all churches doing something with 20s and 30s in terms of mission and ministry. For our project, we are fortunate enough to have been able to employ some 20s to 30s development leaders. So we're growing a team of people, and they've been in post for around a month now.
For me, becoming a Christian, I kind of always sensed this area where there was kind of people in the 20s to 30s age range missing within kind of the church for whatever reason that is. So I'm really, really excited about being able to be involved in thinking of ways and seeing how God can bring these people back into sort of like the church, or how we can engage with them.
I became a Christian a few years ago from 20s and 30s work in the area. So I'm kind of proof that people in the late 20s can come to faith and start serving sort of straight away. And I just love transformation, seeing people transformed by the love of Jesus.
There are a number of things that we've learned in this project that we're applying now right across the diocese, and there's also some additional spin-offs. So some clergy posts now we're actually advertising as having an emphasis of developing 20s to 30s. We're strongly recommending that churches should have somebody under the age of 40 on every appointment panel for a clergy post in the diocese, so that the viewpoint of that particular age range is definitely represented. And I think there is a growing buzz around within the diocese that we're taking this age range seriously, and that can't be anything other than a good thing.